All right, so a summary of where we're up to, and we'll proceed from there. We're looking here at a dispute between the Babylonian Talmud and the Jerusalem Talmud. We'll try and use the Hebrew terms. It's just easier, rolls off the tongue easier. Talmud Bavli and Talmud Yerushalmi. Actually, to be even more succinct, Bavli and Yerushalmi. Okay, we're good. So Bavli means Babylonian Talmud. Yerushalmi means Jerusalem Talmud. Both Talmuds are an elaboration of the same primary text, the Mishnah. The Yerushalmi was composed and written earlier than the Bavli. And the Bavli in general is much more elaborate than the Yerushalmi. So we'll see, we're going to share with you momentarily what the argument is. And the point will be to explain the underpinning of these two views. And finally, as the Rabbi does, this probably won't happen this week, but in the following week or the week after, the spiritual, incredible message to us today. Okay, let's begin our review then. Not of all the detail we learned till now, but just that which is relevant and critical to going forward. And that is, number one, of the following, there's no disagreement. If someone lends money to somebody else, so the law is that if the lender defaults on the payment, so the question is the borrower's breach. So the law is as follows. In other words, can you seize property that has been sold subsequent to the loan? To explain. So the law is that if the loan is contracted by a contract and with witnesses, the assumption is this is a matter of public knowledge, and therefore any potential buyer who is buying property from the lender has to know that the property is on lien, and find out whether the fellow he bought from, the seller, has any loans. Do your due diligence and find out, are there any outstanding loans? Because if you're buying property, there's a chance it'll be seized. How could you find out? You can easily find out, because if it's a loan that's made, contracted with a contract and with witnesses, it's a matter of the public record, and therefore it's accessible. And hence, any property sold subsequent to the loan are on lien, are in danger of being seized by the borrower if the lender defaults in the loan.
Excuse me, Rabbi, I'm really sorry, it's picky, but it's the borrower who's defaulting, correct?
I'm sorry, the borrower. Yeah.
Okay.
I said the lender. Sorry.
Make
the
sure.
borrower. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I would use the Hebrew terms, which I'm more familiar with, but that's going to confuse everybody. So I'm using English, so you'll correct me. I'm probably going to slip up here and there. Okay. Good. Now, if the loan was contracted without either, there were only witnesses but no contract, only a contract but no witnesses, or neither, so then there's no, it's not a matter of public record that this loan took place. Therefore, when the borrower defaults on the loan, doesn't have cash, then the lender can seize properties that he has. He can go after his real estate, but not stuff that he sold. Unencumbered, not encumbered, to use, I think, legal parlance, legal language. Okay, of this there's no argument, and that's straightforward, basic halacha, the rules of borrowing and lending, and the degree of security for the lender. The discussion really revolves around the responsibility, the degree of responsibility of a guarantor, of an orev, of a guarantor. So the law is like this, that if the guarantor is there before the loan takes place, in other words, the loan takes place because there's a guarantor, you follow? There wouldn't be a loan. There's only a loan because someone guarantees that if the lender doesn't pay, I'll pay. So in such a case, the law is that if the borrower defaults, then the lender goes, of course, to the guarantor, and that's the why he's a guarantor, and he can seize properties that he currently owns, even if the guarantor doesn't have cash. You guaranteed, you're liable, you're responsible. Now, the issue here is really, this is the core discussion, which I'm going to introduce now for the first time, for those of us who are here for the first time. The issue here is the idea of a kinyan. What is a kinyan? This is an important component of the laws of acquisitions and responsibility and financial fiscal responsibility. And that is, in order for someone in general, to be held liable for a financial obligation, the person had to have made a kinyan. Now, the word kinyan means acquisition. He has to demonstrate that the financial responsibility he undertook, he actually meant, and didn't just say it facetiously, didn't just say it to make himself look good. Words themselves in halacha, words themselves are not a commitment. Now, one should honor one's word, and the sages are very displeased if one doesn't, and there's all kinds of repercussions, and the person's certainly not held in any high standing if you make promises and don't come good on them. We speak now, however, of the legal obligation to be able to seize cash or even or property. So in order for one to be liable, one has to demonstrate one's seriousness, and one has to make, there's a physical act and acquisition. So we explained that, for example, before the chuppah. So the ksuba, the ksuba is a contract, essentially a financial contract, security for the wife. That's the essence of the ksuba, financial security. In case of death or divorce, then he's committed, and from his estate, to pay X amount to his wife. And this is very important. Our sages said, this is not our discussion, I'm just illustrating. Our sages said that no husband and wife should live together if there's no ksuba. And if the ksuba is lost, immediately they must be replaced, and there's a special way to do that. There's a replacement ksuba, which I do all the time, especially if the marriages were done in a conservative synagogue, reform synagogue, so we have to do sometimes we do the whole marriage, and certainly make a kosher ksuba. Anyway, my point is that the ksuba is his obligation to her. For the ksuba to be binding, he has to make a kinyan. It has to be a demonstrable, did I say that right? Act that expresses his financial commitment, his seriousness, his real commitment. How is this usually done? You've seen this. He picks up something. What's going on over here? He picks up an object. Usually it's a handkerchief or something of that nature. And what is it? This belongs to the witnesses usually, who act in the case of the marriage on her behalf, in a sense. And what's going on here? What's the legal dynamic here? By him acquiring this, it's an exchange. He's acquiring the object, and with this acquisition, this is a physical act. He acquired something, he raises it, it's his. With this acquisition, he is simultaneously giving his obligation. So he's demonstrated it tangibly by this acquisition. I've acquired this, and in so doing, here's the intent. It's an exchange. I'm getting this and giving my obligation in exchange. It's an exchange, and a real exchange. And for that moment, he acquires that handkerchief. He could keep it if he wants to. The point is, once it's done, he gives it back to the witnesses. But the point is, when he's lifting it, he's acquiring it. And what's the point of it? It's called an exchange. And it's therefore demonstrative of his serious intent. I have acquired this, and in exchange, I'm giving my obligation. So the question now is this. All agree, Bavli and Yerushalmi all agree, and I will soon tell you why, that for the guarantor, if the guarantor is present when the loan is being contracted, no kinyan is required. Just on his word. He says, Reuven, lend Shimon the money, I guarantee. Normally, to hold a person liable with words alone, not enough. Although again, he should. But to hold him liable in a court of law, it's not enough if he just said. You've got to demonstrate that with an action. And there's many ways to do that. One, acquiring something, we'll soon see in this case how it works. But the interesting thing is, all agree, Bavli and Yerushalmi, that if the guarantor is there at the outset of the loan, no kinyan is required and he's liable. When do they argue? So they argue if he comes after. In other words, the loan took place, and then he comes along, he's in the court or he's in their presence, wherever this took place, and he says, and you know what, fellas, I guarantee. I guarantee. In this case, there's an argument between Bavli and Yerushalmi, whether those words alone obligate him, or he must back them up with a kinyan. So you have to remember who says what. The Bavli says he needs a kinyan, otherwise we can't hold him liable. And Yerushalmi says his words enough are enough. What's actually the case we're talking about? To be more specific, here's the case where they argue. The case is like this. To hone in on the specific case, and it's a fascinating case, and we'll soon explain it spiritually, not today, but next week or the week after. The case is like this: Reuven owes Shimon whatever X amount of money. Reuven isn't paying up. The time of the loan has come, and he's avoiding payment. Shimon meets him in the street, and he starts strangling him. Pay me! You owe me the money. I need the money. Levi's walking by, and he says to Reuven, who I forgot who I said who owes who. What was the story here? Reuven owes Shimon. Yeah? So Shimon's strangling. So Levi says to Shimon, let him go, I'll pay. The question is, in this case, are they just words or not? Does it have to be backed up by a kinyan in order for Levi to be actually responsible as a guarantor? So here's the argument. The Babylonian Talmud says, if he just said those words, no. But if he made a kinyan, yes. And the Jerusalem Talmud says that even if he didn't make this demonstrative kinyan, his words alone obligated. Now we're going to get to what's the root of their argument. Are we clear so far? So to summarize, the dispute between Bavli and Yerushalmi is in the case after the loan, where Shimon is throttling Reuven, and Levi says, leave him alone, I'll take care of it. Can we hold him to it or not if there's no kinyan? Yerushalmi says without a kinyan he's liable. Bavli says he's got to make a kinyan. We'd have to have acquired a possession belonging to Shimon, and with this he obligates him to pay the loan. Lift it up, something that belongs to Shimon, as we described in the case of the Ksubah. So what's getting that down to the root of these two opinions? So there are two ways to explain the classic case. Why is it in the classic case, go back to the first case, namely, where the guarantor is there at the outset, all agree no kinyan is required. This is an exception to the rule. The guy just says, I'm a guarantor. Why are we holding him liable without tangibly demonstrating that with some kind of act of acquiring the obligation? Why not? So there's two explanations. Please remember, Rashi and the Nemuke Yosef. Rashi, the famous commentary, the most famous commentary of the Talmud, as you all know, he lived, just to give you some history, he lived in France in the 12th century. The Nemuke Yosef, Rabbeinu Yosef, Ibn Bechaya, he lived in Barcelona in the 14th century. Anyway, two classic of hundreds of commentaries on the Talmud. So they argue, as to what's the reason why the Orev, the guarantor, if he's there before the loan happens, doesn't have to make a kinyan. Rashi says like this, because actually a kinyan is happening, a kind of a kinyan. He is getting something. He is getting, because he's actually getting something real. I'll soon tell you what that is. And he's accepted it, and he's been willing to accept it. So that is a demonstration of his, I'm looking for the word, his intent, his earnestness, and actually not just facetiously, but actually becoming a guarantor. And what's that? Very simple thing. On his word, the loan happened. Because I said to Reuven, in this case, Reuven is lending Shimon, okay? Because I said to Reuven, lend Shimon, your tremendous benefit. On my word, somebody went and lent. So I received something. And because I received something, so this is a tangible, a real benefit. The prestige, the trust that Reuven trusts me. I got his trust. So therefore I, the guarantor, is his words are legally binding because he received something. Do you follow the argument here? It's not just words in the air. Something actually happened. On my word, somebody lent. So I got this, that benefit obligates me. With this benefit, that's demonstrative that I wasn't facetious and that I am binding myself to be to guarantor and pay the loan in the case if the borrower can't pay. That's the opinion of Rashi. Keyword here is the guarantor received something. What did I receive? The trust. On my word, a loan was made. And if I'm willing to accept that, then that obligates me. I got something, you give something. You give the word, now means something. Then there's the other explanation, the Nemuka Yosef. It's not about the guarantor receiving, it's what the guarantor caused. Because Reuven can say to the guarantor later when Shimon doesn't pay up, I would never have done this without you. You caused me to put my hand in my pocket and give him $100. So because you caused a real, actual thing on the ground, you're liable. So if a person is ready and willing to cause somebody else to give his money to a third person, that's a demonstrative act, which is a result of the words that I said that obligate me. I know when I say these words, he's going to give that money. So these are not just words. These are words that actually cause something. So because they cause something, they're demonstrative of my intent. Knowing that this is what's going to happen, I mean it. See, the whole I'm hearing sounds. I haven't heard a sound in 5 days in the corridor. You know that'd be in the corridor here. Someone is strangling somebody because of. No, it doesn't sound too bad.
Maybe like somebody lent somebody money.
Hey, someone's strangling somebody.
You might have to go out there and guarantee
be the guarantor. Have to make a kinyan. That's gonna be the whole machlekes, right? Have to make a kinyan or not. Just a second. I'm a little bit concerned. It sounds all right. They call you every day to see how you're doing, mentally as well. I mean, some people are being locked up in a room. Thank God we have more than one room. For 5 days, 6, 7, 10, 12, 15 days.
It's not fun, eh?
Yeah. Well, so far, Baruch Hashem, I'm not complaining. Anyway, let's get back to the discussion here. So, again, the problem with someone saying words is, did he really mean it or not? And if there isn't a tangible consequence or change to this person effected or received, we don't know whether he actually meant them, because words are just words. But if these words because of these words, something happens and he knows that something is going to happen, then those words have the force as if he made the classic physical demonstration of his responsibility. The question here is, what is it that is happening that grants these words the force of actual obligation? Rashi, because of these words, the guarantor got something, trust. Muke Yosef, because of these words, the guarantor caused something that wouldn't have happened otherwise. So very different rationale. Is it what the guarantor received that obligates him, or what the guarantor caused that obligates him? So now, having this insight, we'll understand the difference between the Babylonian Talmud, the Jerusalem Talmud, the Bavli and Yerushalmi. You help me here fill in the blank in their argument. In the case of the strangler, does the guarantor have to make a kinyan or not? To demonstrate, to not demonstrate. Just I'm open the door. 1 second. Hello?
Shoot first, ask questions later.
Everything all right? Hello? Well, it's nobody in the hallway, but maybe have to someone having a big argument inside in their room. And it sounds like it's about the frustration of being quarantined. Anyway, all right, friends, are you with me? Let's go back. So now we'll understand the underpinning between the Bavli and Yerushalmi. The case again is the strangle on the street, and Levi comes along and says, "Leave him alone, I'll pay." Does he need a kinyan to back it up or not? The Bavli said yes, Yerushalmi said no. We now know, and we can figure out the difference based on what's the reason why in general, it's all based on the difference as expressed by Rashi and the Muke Yosef. What's the reason in general why a guarantor becomes liable? The Muke Yosef said, let's start with Rashi. Rashi said because of the benefit. Is there a benefit here? There's a benefit. There's a benefit. Levi said, leave him alone, I will pay. And in those words, the guy left him alone. So what did he get? Again, he got the trust. He got something. He got the mitzvah, aside from the mitzvah that he got. He saved someone from being strangled. But you might want to say he just did it. There's an argument to say he just did it for the mitzvah. He didn't really mean it. But therefore, adding to that, the mitzvah is not a component to make him liable because it's got nothing to do with this loan. It's the trust element. He got his trust. So because his words, leave him alone, I'll pay, he got something that obligates him. Therefore, no kinyan is required. That's the opinion of who? Of the Yerushalmi. The Bavli says, he's got to make a kinyan, otherwise he's not liable. Why? Because the Bavli says the only reason a guarantor is liable is not because of the trust he received. It's because you caused the loan to happen. Did he cause the loan to happen? No. He's coming after us in the street when they're arguing. So since he's not the cause of the loan, we don't know whether his words are facetious or not. He has to demonstrate it with a kinyan in this case that he actually means to become a guarantor. Clear? So we've explained the argument between the Bavli and the Yerushalmi, whether the Reuben strangling Shimon on the street and Levi comes along and says, let go, I'll pay, he's obligated. Does that require a kinyan? Not a kinyan. The Bavli says it needs a kinyan because the Bavli is of the opinion that what makes a guarantor is you caused the loan, not the benefit you got, that you caused it, and he didn't cause it here, so therefore he doesn't become a guarantor unless he takes the next step and says, yes, I am a guarantor with an actual physical kinyan. And according to the Yerushalmi says, yes, and now becomes obligated. Because what makes a guarantor obligated? The trust he received. Did he get the trust now? He did. The guy let go based on his word. So you received something, so you're a guarantor. That's, friends, where we were up to. So now please turn to the text, page 175. Page 175. You have it? Chapter 5. Yeah. Nod of the head. We're good so far, so good.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Okay. So yes, so we're saying in the text now, and we're going to further explain what we said till now. Beautiful insight now, friends. This difference, these two opinions. These two opinions as to what makes a guarantor a guarantor. Is it what you cause or what you receive? So this is rooted in the difference between Bnei Bavel and Bnei Yisrael, between living in Bavel in Babylon, outside Israel, or living in Israel, because that's the argument here between the Bavli and Yerushalmi. The Bavli says you got to make a kinyan, otherwise your word, we can't hold you to this word in this case. And the Yerushalmi says you don't have to make a kinyan, Mr. Guarantor, because you received the trust. So this is all rooted in the difference between Israel and Babylon, or Israel and the diaspora. What's the difference? Let's go. So the whole discussion here about the obligation of a guarantor is all dependent, as self-understood. We're trying to know what's the person's intent. That's the whole question here. Is it just words, or does he mean it? So, bedaitam or manigosam shebnei adam, it all depends on the attitude and the behavior of people. We find in halacha, we find in halacha, quote, if there's a city, an area, a country, a state, where they never make a kinyan, it's all on the word, like the Diamond District in New York. Huge deals are made on the word, and that's the way the business works. Even if that's the way they conduct themselves, that guarantors give words even after deals have been contracted, and if that's the universal custom in that locale, minhagam minig, then that's the law. When it comes to contracts and obligation, halacha says, first and foremost, you have to look at the way people conduct themselves. Nobody can argue afterwards. I didn't mean it, if everybody, when they do this, means it. So therefore, it's only in the absence where there's no particular conduct, then we have the rules, Bavli, Yerushalmi. But if a certain community, this is the way business is done, then that's the way it's done. And everybody's bound by these rules. So therefore, the difference between the halachic opinions of Bavli and Yerushalmi, is a kinyan required or not? In the case of the strangler, it's all totally bedas b'nei. It's all an outgrowth of the attitude of the people in these two places, Babylon and Israel. And that is rooted in the difference between the two places. We'll understand that by understanding the differences between these two locations, Bavli and Yisrael. What's the difference? So one is the Holy Land and one's not the Holy Land. What does this mean? The Gemara says, everybody has the place, page 175, second column. The whole notion of responsibility the one Jew has for another, the one Jew is obligated for his fellow. This, says the Gemara, the Talmud, was forged only when the Jews crossed the Jordan with Yeshua and entered that Yisrael, then they become mixed and united. Therefore, the Gemara explains, Hashem says that a community will be held responsible for the idolatrous transgressions of even those who do it in the privacy of their home. But that law of communal responsibility only kicks in when they entered in Eretz Yisrael. Why? Well, we did this last week. The Rogatchover explains, since all Jews are one entity, we're all one great spiritual body, therefore we're responsible one for the other. But if we wouldn't be one entity, out of us, we're individuals. I'm not responsible for your life, what happens in the privacy of your home if we're individuals. But if we are family, if we are one entity, then there's a responsibility to what's going on in someone else's life when it comes to idolatry, very serious transgressions, and we're all culpable because we all should be not just know what's going on, we should all be inspiring each other to the extent and connected this wouldn't happen. And if it does, it means we're not behaving like a family should. Now, having said that, this is the difference between Israel and Babylon and outside Israel, the diaspora. It says in the Gemara, the notion of an uchlas means a group of people that form one homogeneous unit doesn't exist in Babylon. Meaning with Ratzaloima Deleka Tzirif. There's not this idea in Babylon, not living in the Holy Land. We'll explain why, because it's not the Holy Land. So therefore there's separation and there's lack of oneness. It's where God is revealed, where there's holiness, that there's oneness. But the diaspora, there isn't to that degree. Therefore, the notion of a unified multitude doesn't exist. And there's an opinion that says that in Babylon, the sages in Babylon do not have the right to enact a communal fast because the notion of a community doesn't exist. It's individuals. There's much detail to this, but the principle you get. On the other hand, Be'eretz Yisrael, in Israel, Nas Yisrael Mitzvah Shel Tzibur Echad, Jews are forged into one identity, one entity. Therefore, turn the page. When they crossed the Jordan, on page 176, became one identity. Out of us, and the whole law of communal responsibility now devolves on them because they become one. It's true, the Rabbi continues. Once historically we crossed the Jordan and we became this one people. Out of us, Talmud. It never goes away. We forever become one people, in every place. That's true. In essence, we'll soon see where the difference between Israel and the Holy Land still exists. Hence, the argument between Bavli and Yerushalmi, we'll see at the end. But let's follow this reasoning here. So once we cross the land of Israel, no matter wherever we are dispersed, wherever we live, anywhere else, no one can take away, and that's a forever thing. We become responsible for each other. We become forged into this one people. And therefore, interesting in the halacha, that's why we have this law that one can discharge somebody else at any time, any place in the mitzvahs. I can make kiddush for you, you answer amen, and you fulfill the mitzvah. Or blow the shofar for you, or many other mitzvahs, one person can discharge on behalf of somebody else. Not in every mitzvah, but in many mitzvahs. This is the idea of because we're all one. I blew the shofar, you heard it, it's like you blew it. Although in that case, the mitzvah is to hear it to begin with. But that's a kiddush. Every person's obligated Friday night to declare the sanctity of the day over a glass of wine. One person does it, other answer amen. Good. How's this happen? I said it. How do you fulfill your obligation? By going amen, because we are responsible for each other. And the Hebrew word for responsible, out of us, also means mixed. La'arev means to mix. We are all mixed with each other. Therefore, I can discharge your obligation. B'chol says, nonetheless, since nonetheless the law remains that outside Israel, the court does not have the authority to legalize, to mandate a public fast. It tells us that outside Israel, it's there in a very deep way, this unity, but doesn't manifest fully. Outside Israel, which is not the Holy Land, the idea of us being one is not fully and perfectly manifest. Moving, therefore, it's understood. Where is the true, raw, pure notion of Jews being one? Where does it exist? Where does it manifest? Perfectly, completely. Only living in Israel. Now we'll understand the difference between the root of the Bavli and the Yerushalmi. Therefore, in the Talmud of Babylon, it's outside Israel. The oneness of Jews is there in a very essential way, but it's not manifested like it is in Israel, the Holy Land. The Holy Land just brings that out. It's the Holy Land. So therefore, the Babylonian, the Bavli Talmud is inclined to say that if when Levi comes along and says that I'm a guarantor, leave him, I'll pay. We need to know, do you really mean this? So we need Dorish Maisa B'Poel. We need Levi to make a kinyan. All right, the Ummah is skip to the next one. I just summarized that. So I just explained, if the guarantor is at the beginning of the loan, then we don't need a kinyan because his word actually caused on the ground the loan to be contracted. But if it happens afterwards, and he didn't actually cause anything tangible, the money to go from Reuven to Shimon, there's got to be a kinyan. Why? Because the unity isn't that manifestedly powerful that on the word alone, that's real and you mean it and it's sincere and you're obligated. You got to demonstrate it with a kinyan, unless the loan was contracted based on your word, and then there is a kinyan because money went from here to there on your word. That's the Bavli. But the Yerushalmi is Yerushalmi. But the sages in living in Israel and Jerusalem, Talmud Asher Yisrael, Ashebo Kol Yisrael Him Kitzibur. There, it's a higher level of living spiritually, and all Jews are like one entity. Ba'abas of his achdos, mixed and united. Border, it's clear to them, and it's true there. Sheshibah the order of Ein Chayiv Losses Dafka the Pu'ula Shetitin Take Ma'isel out of us. You don't have to become a guarantor. We don't have to actually see money go from here to there. It's enough. The benefit is enough. It's not so tangible. It's more spiritual, but it's sufficient. It's enough that the benefit that the guarantor got to make him a guarantor. Was there a benefit here? Yes. In the case of the strangulation, on his word, the guy trusted him and let him go. So that is enough. Why is it enough in Israel? Because in Israel, to begin with, the unity, the connection between one Jew and another is much more manifest and much more real. And therefore, we don't need to have, like the Babylonian Talmud requires, in order for a guarantor to be liable, we have to see physically money go from point A to point B. And if he didn't cause the loan, you can't obligate him unless he makes a kinyan. Unless he acquired something physically. We need a physical acquisition. But the Yerushalmi doesn't require physical acquisition. You gain trust. It's a spiritual thing. That's enough to move a person. It's enough to move a Jew in Israel. It isn't enough to move one in Babylon, where we're caught up in the world of the secular world, and to some degree caught up with it, at least externally. So we follow the distinction so far, so good. We've explained the difference and the reason for the ruling of the Yerushalmi, who says you don't need a kinyan for the guarantor to be held liable, and the Bavli that says he does need a kinyan. We'll go a little bit further. Chapter 6. Are we good? A nod, a shake, a wink, thumbs up. Good. But Derech Hamus, it's getting more exciting out there. Now there's a message for us. Like we said before, and let's see what's coming now. When Yidden live in their place in Israel, in Israel, we are manifestedly and consciously one great entity, tzibur echad meyuchad, one unique community. Us then, die b'chol davar. It's enough anything. Hapegei b'Yehudi echad that touches another Jew. V'afilu rak grimas tzaro kedoime, and even just discomfort or pain, that's enough to stir and cause kedei ligroim to affect lakach this shehudi ach another Jew yimsmase should give himself over v'yishtabed and bind himself kedei limlei tzar zeh to stop this pain. Someone is being threatened on the street. You heard that?
An opera singer.
What?
Sounds like an opera singer.
No, it's 11:20 at night now. It actually sounds really. Yeah, we're gonna call downstairs and find out what's going on there. So in Israel again, we will live in this heightened state of unity. So you see another Jew in pain, that's enough to move me so deeply. When I say the words, let him go, I mean it. The guarantor is a real benefit that he helped another fellow Jew. Because he and the other Jew are not two separate people. His being relieved is my relief. Like one entity. Beautiful quote now coming. This is all the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says like this, also it's a famous quote. It says like this. The Torah says not to take revenge, not to be, we just read this in Parshas Kedoshim, not to take revenge and not to take, in other words, there's another thing, revenge, or not to bear a grudge or take revenge. So the Yerushalmi says like this, imagine, he says, if one hand, by mistake, cut the other hand with the knife, what's a person going to do? This hand's going to say, oh, you cut me, so your person is going to cut his other hand? If the right hand by mistake cut the left hand, would the person, anybody say in anger, that his left hand is cut, now it's going to take revenge and cut the right hand? Of course not. Why? It's a person. So that Yerushalmi says, take revenge on another Jew. We're all part of one great body. So this is consistent with Yerushalmi, which demand this tremendous level of sensitivity and unity, because living in Eretz Yisrael, in Israel, there should engender that. And if it doesn't, by the way, it's a very place of extremes. It's either tremendous unity or tremendous conflict, nothing in between. That's because the energy is so powerful, the holiness is so powerful, the soul is stirred one way or another. On the other hand, Babylon means place of confusion. So the word Babel comes from Babylon because the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, confused everybody. How? Because all the places that he conquered, he uprooted people and made them settle and live in different, not in their native homeland. He brilliant moves that there shouldn't be revolution and people nationalism. You're not living where in your homeland. So this would preempt any kind of uprising. But from there came the word Babel, confusion, which means a lack of unity. It's the whole idea of mixed lack of unity. No roots, no connection, no identity. So therefore, Jews are affected that way also, externally. So therefore, not living in the Holy Land, the unity amongst Jews isn't all of that tangible and powerful. So if a Jew is going to devote himself to somebody else, it's going to be more than just getting some benefit that I'm feeding off his benefit. I've got to actually cause something on the ground. Then I'm liable. To me be liable, I've got to be really responsible. I caused the loan, that's going to make me liable. But if I didn't cause the loan, it doesn't. That's in Babylon. But in Bavel, if my words didn't actually cause anything to change, money to go from Reuven's pocket to Shimon, to make me actually liable, I have to really demonstrate that with a real action, a kinyan. That will prove and demonstrate actually mean to obligate myself to the other fellow to pay his debt. But only then will the lender decide to rely on this obligation. He'll rely on it only when he backs it up with an actual demonstrative act of an acquisition. So next week, God willing, we're going to go into even greater spiritual depth and beautiful, exquisite explanation why this law appears at the end of BAVA BASRA. BAVA BASRA means the third gate. There are 3 gates which deal with the laws of damages in Halal, in Mishnah, in Talmud. BAVA Kama, BAVA Metzia, BAVA BASRA. The first gate, the middle gate, and the third gate. Again, understand why why there are 3 gates and why this is the final law and the spiritual meaning of being strangled and the Bavli, the Yerushalmi, and all that is to come, God willing, next Sunday. We should all be well. We'll meet again. All right, friends, in the next little break now, and at 11:30 for you, 9:30, we will start the Mordechai, Dov, and Pesach HaLevi class. Okay, see you soon. Meanwhile,
Well, take care, Rabbi.
have a wonderful week. Good to see
Yeah,
you all.
Rabbi
Thanks
knew
a-
it else. This part is